This Day in Sports History. And welcome back to This Day in Sports History. It's April 6th, and here's a question for you. What would you be willing to do for 7 hours straight? Sleep, I would assume, to be at the top of that list. Maybe binge White Lotus, maybe a day at the beach, assuming it's not super hot and you have access to plenty of beverages, possibly 36 holes at your local muni. Anything else? How about spending that time boxing? Well, that's what happened on this day in 1893 when Andy Bowen and Jack Burke climbed into a ring, put the boxing gloves on, and started throwing haymakers. The fight took place in Bowen's hometown of New Orleans at the Olympic Club. Estimates of about 11,000 people piled into the club that night, paying between $1 and $3 and packing the place to the gills to watch these two guys go at it for a $2,500 payday and the lightweight championship of the South. The fight started at 9:15 in the evening, and there was a buzz in the place as the bell rang to start the fight, and there was some good action through the early rounds, with both guys being put on the mat. But that buzz died down after the first 30 rounds. In fact, the sound of snoring may have been more prominent at that point. The pace of the fight slowed substantially. Bowen nearly ended the fight in the 48th round when he put Burke on the canvas for what looked like a knockout, but Burke rallied and the fight continued. Burke was not looking too good, though. There were reports from that night that talked about his forearms swelling to double the size. Add to that, both his hands were broken, and yet he continued on. Bowen was also tiring and was offered a draw with the $2,500 purse being split down the middle, but he refused. The fight dragged on. In round 93, the referee was so exhausted that he actually had to be replaced. The fighters did not have that luxury, however. Finally, at 4:34 in the morning, after the 110th round, the fight was finally stopped. And the winner? Nobody. It was declared a draw after 7 hours, 19 minutes. Burke had to be carried out of the ring and subsequently carried home. He was in pretty rough shape with the aforementioned swollen arms, the broken hands, along with welts all over his torso, a swollen stomach, and eyes puffed up like pillows. He convalesced in bed for more than 2 weeks. Bowen, on the other hand, was in much better shape and felt like he'd been cheated out of the full purse. So, without a doubt, this is one of those unbreakable records in sports history. But it does hold the mark for longest fight with gloves. Hey, real quick, you've heard me talk a lot about the Sterling Soap Company over the past few months, and if you haven't tried out their soaps, I get it. It's not easy changing up your routine. But let me just say, if you give them a try, I'm nearly 100% certain you will have zero regrets. They carry not only bar soap, but shave soap, liquid body soap, body lotions, beard balm, lip balm, and a lot more. Plus, there are myriad scents to choose from. Their products are made with natural ingredients and scented oils, and they are committed to being environmentally conscious. And I always get a handwritten note on my packing slip, so I know it's been checked before shipping, and it's a nice little human touch in a world that seems to be going away from that. Give Sterling Soap a try today at sterlingsoap.com. On this day in 1987, let's go back to the ring for the Superfight between reigning middleweight champion Marvelous Marvin Hagler and Sugar Ray Leonard. For boxing historians, this is a fight that causes more arguments than politics and religion at a family Thanksgiving dinner. Leonard had only fought one other time in the previous 3 years, and that was a 9-round win over Kevin Howard back in 1984, and after that one, retired for the second time. He had also suffered several eye injuries, and he was coming off of eye surgery. Hagler was a huge betting favorite. His 2 previous fights had been brutal beatings of Thomas Hitman Hearns and John Mugabe. The fight on this night was held at Caesar's Palace, and Hagler, a well-known southpaw, started this fight fighting conventional and was the pursuer from the start, swinging for the fences. Leonard was more active in the ring, moving around, landing punches and combos when he could. By the fourth round, Hagler had gone back to his southpaw stance, but Leonard was timing his punches and connecting a little bit better and winning the early rounds.
A little showboat punch from Leonard. That brought the crowd alive, many of them to their feet.
It's a great performance by Sugar Ray Leonard so far, Tim. Great performance.
Hagler regained the momentum after going back to his natural stance, and Leonard tired a bit in the middle rounds. By the end of the ninth, it looked like Hagler was back on top.
Hagler backing up Leonard into the Leonard corner. Short right uppercut.
He's nailing him now, Tim.
Right to the chin.
That's where he has to put that left hand.
Leonard in some difficulty. Hasn't thrown a punch out of this corner. Now he does. Trying to bang his way out.
Look at that determination of Ray Leonard. You talk about a champion.
What a display.
Absolutely gritted his teeth. Look at him go.
Again, in the middle of the ring, and Hagler stays there and punches back.
That was an extraordinary exchange between the two. Leonard had a good 10th and 11th round, but gave the 12th away, visibly tired, and the decision went to the cards. When the final bell rang, both fighters thought that they had won the fight. Hagler danced back to his corner. Leonard climbed the ropes and flexed for the crowd.
Judge Lou Filippo scores the bout. 115, Marvin Hagler. 113, Ray Leonard. Judge Jojo Guerra scores the bout. 118, Leonard. 110, Hagler. And Judge Dave Moretti scores 115, 113. By the winner and new middleweight champion of the world, Sugar Ray Leonard.
The card that scored Leonard the winner 118 to 110 caused the controversy. Hagler was disgusted. His corner was apoplectic, and many sitting ringside thought Hagler had been severely wrong. The judge who scored it 118 to 110 for Leonard defended his decision in the immediate aftermath, but when he re-watched the fight, he felt like, he had made a mistake and given 2 rounds to Sugar Ray that he should have given to Hagler. That judge was not invited back to score another fight in Vegas ever again. Hagler retired after this one, and there was talk of maybe Hagler coming back in a rematch between these two, but it never materialized, and Hagler never fought again. On this day in 1958, Arnold Palmer won his first major golf tournament, and the world of golf was changed forever. Palmer was a fresh-faced 28-year-old playing in the Masters. This was his 4th year on the PGA Tour, and he had 8 wins under his belt, but he was still looking for that first major title. He had some good days at Augusta National, finishing in the top 10 twice in his 3 previous attempts. Well, on this day, Palmer started the day tied for the lead with Sam Snead after a 3rd-round 68. But that final day at the Masters was played a little bit different than it is now. On this day, Palmer, as the leader, went out several hours before the final group of the day and was paired with Ken Venturi, who had been the leader after the first 2 rounds. Something else to know, the weather had been rainy and the course was soaked. A thunderstorm had passed through the night before, and the deluge of rain left the golf course a boggy, soggy mess. Masters officials nearly postponed the final round, but instead decided to play it. And the weather did play a role in this one, with some controversy. Rules on the day, since it was so wet on the course, allowed for the lift, clean, and placing of the ball. Coming to the par 3 12th with a 1-shot lead, Palmer hit his tee shot long into the bank behind the green. Venturi had done the same thing, but his shot had bounced back onto the putting surface, where he was able to 2-putt for par. But Palmer's ball got stuck, and it was embedded. Well, speaking with a rules official at the hole, Palmer was told that he had to play it as it was. Well, Palmer chopped at the buried ball and moved it about 1.5 feet, and he ended up making a 5. But Palmer knew the rules of the day, and so instead of heading to the next tee, he went back to the spot, placed his ball as he would have if he had done the lift, clean, in place, hit his second, and he tapped in for a 3. But which could he put on his scorecard? A 3, and he still had a 1-shot lead. A 5, and he trailed by 1. It wasn't until several holes later when tournament founder Bobby Jones told Palmer that he was correct and he had parred the 12th. Coming to the 18th, Palmer felt like he needed a birdie to secure the win, but a 3-putt left him with a bogey 5 instead for a final round 73. And then he had to wait and wait some more. He waited more than an hour for the final group to come to the 18th. Both Fred Hawkins and defending champion Doug Ford needed birdies to tie Palmer, but neither could do better than par and finished a shot back. It was Palmer's first of 7 major tournament wins and the first of 4 green jackets he would win in his career. So, how did this change golf? Well, while golf has had great champions throughout its history, Jones, Byron Nelson, Ben Hogan, among others, this was the era of television, and more homes were adding them, and the charismatic Palmer was perfect to bring the game to the masses. Couple that with the rivalry that would soon emerge with Jack Nicklaus and Gary Player, coverage of golf began to flourish, and a lot of people around the country, both men and women, took up the game. Arnold's Army grew in great numbers after his win on this day in the Masters. Interesting fact, the 1958 Masters is when the term Amen Corner originated. Sports Illustrated's Herbert Warren Wind coined the term in his article about the final day's action at the 11th, 12th, and 13th holes. On this day in 1973, New York Yankee Ron Blomberg became the first designated hitter in Major League Baseball when he stepped to the plate in the first inning and drew a bases-loaded walk off Boston's Louis Tiant. The DH rule had been adopted by the American League in January for a 3-year trial period. The DH had actually been proposed nearly 7 decades earlier. Famed Philadelphia Athletics manager Connie Mack had the idea back in 1906, and he argued its merits, but nobody else really seemed to like the idea. It did not really start gaining any momentum until the late 60s, and then finally approved for a trial run in 73. The first DH to hit a home run also happened on this day when Minnesota's Tony Oliva hit a 2-run shot off Oakland's Jim Catfish Hunter in the first inning in what would be an 8-3 win for the Twins. And on this day in 1997, the St. Louis Blues' Craig McTavish retired from hockey. McTavish, who played with the Bruins, Oilers, Rangers, Flyers, and the Blues in his 17-year career, holds the distinction of being the last hockey player in the NHL to play without a helmet. When the rule was passed June 1, 1979, mandating helmets, players already on NHL rosters were grandfathered in and could choose to play without one if they signed a waiver. And time now for today's That's Got Nothing to Do with Sports fun fact. If you are a fan of dinosaurs, then you certainly know what a stegosaurus is, right? And that it has a spiky tail? Well, since the first stegosaurus bones were uncovered in the 1870s, that spiky tail didn't really have a name. But in a 1982 Far Side cartoon, Gary Larson had a character refer to the spiky tail of a stegosaurus as a thagomizer. That name, meant as a joke in a comic, became the accepted term in the scientific community. This has been an original Thrive Suite production.